Hi there, I'm Baldwin Burgess. Today I'd like to speak about something that a lot of business development and salespeople struggle with. It's a mistake that they make. And I like to call it the professor mistake. Because some of the smartest people that I know are not very good at sales. And the reason for that is pretty simple actually, because they make the professor mistake. And that's assuming that your audience, whoever you're talking to, has as much knowledge about your subject as you do. So here's what happens. You as an expert, you've spent so much time perfectioning your knowledge about a certain subject that you totally take it for granted that everybody assumes all the things that you assume, that everybody's been up your learning curve. You often hear that the best teachers are also people who are just a few steps ahead of you because they can still empathize. Is that a word? Yeah, you can. Or they can still understand what you are going through in your learning process. So for them, it's very recent memory, and therefore they can get in the zone with you about this, right? But most of the time, it doesn't really happen that way. Now, the other thing is that people like to put up a brave face, or they like to pretend that they know more about something than they would admit to, because not doing so puts them under the pressure of maybe seeming simple, and so there's a very strange dynamic taking place here. I made this mistake more than I want to admit. I mean, really, I've been in the professor mistake zone many more times than I can even remember. But one good example that comes to mind is when I wanted to put together this workshop on personal branding, and the mistake that I made is that the mistake that I made is not many people showed up, and was because I actually failed to clarify that personal branding is actually very good for your career. And so because I just assumed that everybody would make that connection, but that wasn't the case. And that's why only a handful of people showed up to my program. See, so this happened to me in my sales roles. We get stuck in jargon. We just riff on the things that seem very intuitive to us, but we're obviously not resonating with the people who need to learn more about why our proposition matters. Or maybe it's a problem that they haven't really explored enough, so you have to help them explore that problem a little bit further so they can start asking the right questions and then maybe find the right solution. So another way to look at this is that the professor mistake is often more like when you are trying to impress your peers rather than your target audience, right? So because if you go out and simplify your concepts when you're surrounded by your competitors or your peers, it's going to sort of make you feel a little bit dumb, right? And that is a pressure that we also have. So the problem is that when we're speaking to an audience, we're always assuming that, or afraid of the fact that our peers may want to laugh at us when we explain things so simply. But in fact, we're really doing a disservice to our audience. So the thing is, what usually happens is that if whatever you're communicating seems very complicated, your target audience just may stop listening. And so what happens is, like, you may feel smart by the way that you present things, but your audience tunes out and feels dumb. So, and in the end, really nobody wins. And here's another big reason why we need to simplify our message. Because it's not always about convincing the person we're speaking to. It's not always convincing that gatekeeper, if you can call him that way. But most of the time, it also has to do with that person convincing other stakeholders. So the easier you make it for your contact person, or whoever the intermediary or the person is that you need to deal with, the easier you make it for them to understand the concept, the more likely it is that they're going to be able to champion your idea or your solution and convince the stakeholders that need to make a decision on this. And the same is true for reputation risk, because obviously your prospects need to understand what they're going to be getting into. And so again, if you make that very vague, that's obviously when they're not going to feel very confident in making their decision. Makes sense, right? So it all comes down to simplifying your message as much as you can. And if you notice that there's, obviously if your audience is a little bit more advanced, then they will probably also let you know, or there will be more specific questions about things that you need to then explain in a little bit more detail. But the thing is, the good thing about getting that kind of interaction going is that it also opens up a space for a dialogue. So the bottom line here is never assume that your target audience knows as much about your subject as you do, but try to make it very easy for them not only to understand, but also repeat what it is that you can do for them to others. All right, that's all for today. Thanks a lot, and until soon.